Audiobook Academy Biography presents Pete Buttigieg. Former South Bend, Indiana, Mayor Pete Buttigieg was a Democratic presidential candidate in 2020 and is now the Secretary of Transportation for the United States. He is the first out-gay cabinet secretary in American history. Pete Buttigieg served as mayor of South Bend, Indiana, for 2 terms, from 2013 to 2017. He served as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy Reserve during his deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. After graduating from Harvard and receiving a Rhodes Scholarship from Oxford. This would have made him America's youngest and first openly gay president, if he had succeeded in his presidential bid in 2020. In early March 2020, Buttigieg announced that he was suspending his presidential campaign. Childhood and the family. Peter Paul Montgomery Buttigieg was born on January 19, 1982, in South Bend, Indiana, the only child of Joseph and Jennifer Buttigieg. Joseph's father came to the United States from Malta while he was a student at the University of Notre Dame, where he was a literature professor for nearly 30 years. Jennifer Buttigieg, Buttigieg's mother, is a linguist and native of Indiana. Jennifer, like her husband, worked as a professor at the University of Notre Dame for over 3 decades before retiring. Buttigieg, the son of 2 college professors, was an academic prodigy. He was the valedictorian of his high school and accepted into Harvard University, where he studied history and literature. A Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, where he earned a BA in philosophy, politics, and economics after graduating from the University of Michigan in 2004. At the beginning of his career in Washington, D.C., Buttigieg became involved in state politics and was hired as a director by a consulting firm. John Kerry's 2004 presidential campaign and McKinsey & Company, a Chicago-based consulting business, were among his post-college jobs. This progressive national security organization has him on its advisory board of directors. In addition to his native English, Buttigieg is fluent in Italian, Maltese, Spanish, Dari Persian, Arabic, French, and Norwegian, the last being self-taught. Buttigieg enlisted in the military in 2007 as a volunteer and supporter of Barack Obama's presidential campaign. During his first stint as mayor of South Bend in 2014, he was deployed to Kabul, Afghanistan, where he was a member of the Afghanistan Threat Finance Cell, ATFC, an effort to disrupt terrorist organizations' financial networks. Shortest Way Home, Buttigieg's autobiography from 2019, recounts his time serving as an army officer and police officer in Kabul, Afghanistan. In a ritual that would be repeated dozens of times, I would lift my armored torso into the driver's seat of a Land Cruiser, chamber a round in my M4, lock the doors and wave a gloved goodbye to the Macedonian gate guard, he wrote. Leaving ISAF headquarters, my vehicle would travel outside the wire and into the bustling Afghan metropolis, entering a world vastly more exciting and ordinary and deadly than our zone behind the blast walls. Buttigieg came out as gay in 2015, inspired by his time abroad. As South Bend's mayor, he became the youngest mayor of a city with more than 100,000 citizens in the United States at the age of 29, after winning the mayoral race in South Bend, Indiana. Despite being re-elected in 2015, Buttigieg's record was marred by a scandal. South Bend's police chief Darrell Boykins requested wiretapping of his officers' phone calls from federal authorities during his first term in office. When Buttigieg learned of Boykins' demotion, he also asked for his resignation. Boykins, the city's first black police chief, later filed a discrimination lawsuit against the city, alleging, previous white police chiefs purportedly conducted the same wiretapping policy. As Buttigieg puts it, this was his first big error as mayor because of the controversy it caused. Buttigieg, despite a few issues, had a positive impact on the city. Abandoned buildings were repaired and rehabilitated, and low-income housing was supported. He also advocated urban development projects. After 2 terms in government, Buttigieg stepped down in favor of James Mueller, a former high school classmate and chief of staff. Career in politics. After launching his presidential campaign in April 2019, Buttigieg was trailing only Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren in the polls at the end of the year. Medicare. The healthcare argument in the United States is still hot and contentious, but Buttigieg took a middle-of-the-road approach. According to him, offering an opt-in option would give Americans greater control over their healthcare while still allowing those who choose private insurance to do so. Buttigieg's Medicare for All Who Want It idea was compared to the more leftist contenders like Sanders and Warren's single-payer plan. Douglas's strategy. Buttigieg suggested the Douglas Plan to address the concerns of black disenfranchisement and reparations, which were discussed by 2020 Democratic contenders. As a tribute to Frederick Douglass, abolitionist and civil rights activist who worked tirelessly to end slavery, the plan was renamed the Frederick Douglass Community Development Block Grant Program. Aside from aiding African Americans, the Douglass Plan had a positive impact on a number of other marginalized groups. Service to the nation. To address some of the most important concerns of our time, including as climate change, addiction and mental health difficulties, and mentorship, Buttigieg developed a new call to service, a strategy that encouraged high school students to volunteer in national organizations like Peace Corps and AmeriCorps. The Supreme Court of the United States of America. Buttigieg studied the option of adding 5 more justices to the current Supreme Court structure in an effort to depoliticize the court. It is only after the original 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices vote unanimously to allow these new justices to serve that they will be allowed to do so. If elected president, Buttigieg would appoint a bipartisan panel to examine the best and most practical options for limiting the terms of Supreme Court justices. The Transportation Secretary. Buttigieg was approved as Vice President Biden's Secretary of Transportation on February 2, 2021, making him the nation's first openly homosexual cabinet official. "I'm honored and humbled by today's vote in the Senate, and ready to get to work," he tweeted. Withdrawing from school. Iowa caucuses in February 2020 were seen as a turning point for Buttigieg's candidacy, but the candidate's momentum faded quickly in following contests. Buttigieg announced his withdrawal from the presidential race on March 1, only days after finishing third in South Carolina behind Biden and Sanders. "Our aim has always been to unify Americans to beat Donald Trump and to win the era for our ideals," he said to fans at a campaign event. "The greatest way to keep faith with those goals and ideals at this time in the election is to step aside and help bring our party and country together, so we must realize that." Personal and family life. Chasten Buttigieg is Buttigieg's husband, whom he met on a dating service in 2015. Chasten became a junior high school teacher after receiving his master's degree from DePaul University and worked at a Montessori school in Indiana. Chasten resigned from his teaching position following Buttigieg's announcement that he was running for president. As an Episcopalian, Buttigieg set himself apart from his 2020 Democratic rivals by focusing on his Christian faith. Buttigieg was praised and criticized by religious leaders for his willingness to call out fellow Republicans who oppose policies that help the poor and his remarks on their hypocrisy. He publicly slammed evangelical Christian Vice President Mike Pence for being a cheerleader for the porn star president and criticized conservative Christians who backed Donald Trump. "Because my party's been so allergic to religious language, we've forgotten that people need to be made aware of their choice," Buttigieg told reporters. "I've got to speak up, if only to point out the hypocrisies of those now in power. Time will tell whether that's smart politically or not." Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.
I love the chase and the hunt.